For over a century, the three-pointed star didn't just represent a car, it represented a rival. Mercedes-Benz wasn't built to chase trends. Trends chased Mercedes. But today, something feels off. Luxury buyers are hesitating, loyal customers are questioning their faith, and critics are asking a once unthinkable question. Has Mercedes-Benz lost what made it luxury? With profits collapsing, margins shrinking, and its most important market slipping away, this isn't just a business downturn, it's a crisis of identity. Chapter 1. The Gold Standard. When Mercedes defined luxury for decades, Mercedes-Benz didn't compete in the luxury segment. It was the segment. Luxury, in the Mercedes sense, was never flashy. It was quiet confidence, engineering that outlasted trends, owners, even generations. Old Mercedes sedans were famously described as overbuilt. Doors closed with a vault-like thud. Engines ran smoothly for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Taxi fleets around the world relied on Mercedes because they simply would not die. And that reliability wasn't accidental. It was philosophy. Mercedes believed luxury meant engineering first, longevity over novelty, authority over excitement. You didn't buy a Mercedes to show off. You bought one because it earned respect. The S-Class wasn't just a flagship, it was an industry blueprint. Safety systems, ride comfort, build quality, and other brands waited years for Mercedes innovations to trickle down. AMG was rare. Maybach was mythical. Owning one meant you were part of an elite circle. Mercedes didn't need to explain itself. The badge did all the talking. But that philosophy depended on something fragile: restraint. Luxury only works when it's scarce, uncompromising, and unapologetically expensive. Once you start chasing everyone, you stop belonging to some. And that restraint slowly, quietly, began to disappear. Chapter 2. The numbers don't lie. A brand under pressure. Luxury brands are emotional, but businesses are brutal. And right now, Mercedes-Benz is under immense financial pressure. In early 2025, the company revealed a 56% collapse in net income compared to the previous year. Profit margins, once among the strongest in the industry, fell to 5.3%, down from more than 15%. That kind of decline doesn't just worry shareholders, it forces desperate decisions. High-end luxury vehicles traditionally, Mercedes' profit engine, stopped delivering. Sales of the S-Class, EQS, and Maybach underperformed. In Q2 2025 alone, premium segment sales dropped by 25%. Suddenly, the strategy that once defined Mercedes' low-volume, high-margin was no longer sustainable. CEO Ola Källenius faced a choice: double down on exclusivity and risk financial instability, or pivot toward volume-driven survival. Mercedes chose survival. The new goal became clear: sell over 2 million vehicles annually, even if it meant sacrificing exclusivity. Smaller, more affordable models like the CLA were brought back into focus, reversing earlier plans to abandon these segments entirely. From a business perspective, it made sense. Volume stabilizes revenue. Mass-market cars spread development costs. Lower prices attract new buyers. But luxury brands don't live or die by logic alone. They live by perception. And the moment Mercedes started acting like a volume manufacturer, people started seeing it as one. Chapter 3. From exclusivity to accessibility. The dangerous pivot, luxury, isn't defined by price alone. It's defined by who can't have it. Mercedes once understood this better than almost anyone. But today, accessibility has become the new priority. After disappointing sales at the top end, Mercedes began refocusing on higher volume, slightly more affordable vehicles. Cars designed not to dominate boardrooms, but parking lots. this shift wasn't subtle. Product decisions started favoring cost efficiency, shared platforms, broader market appeal. The result? Mercedes models that feel less special. When luxury brands chase volume, two things happen. The badge appears more often. Its meaning weakens. For longtime Mercedes owners, the emotional equation changed. If everyone can have it, what does it say about you? This isn't about snobbery. It's about identity signaling the unspoken language luxury brands speak. By moving down market, Mercedes didn't just attract new customers. It alienated old ones. The danger isn't selling cheaper cars. The danger is thinking cheaper cars don't change perception. Because once a luxury brand becomes common, no amount of marketing can make it feel rare again. Chapter 4. Quality Control. When engineering lost its crown, nothing damages a luxury brand faster than broken trust. And for Mercedes, trust was built on one promise: this car will outlast you. That promise is now under scrutiny. In recent years, Mercedes has faced growing criticism over quality control and reliability issues, electronic component failures, software glitches, interior materials that feel less premium, increased warranty complaints. For a mass-market brand, these issues are inconvenient. For a luxury brand, they're existential. Luxury buyers don't just pay for comfort, they pay for confidence. The feeling that nothing was compromised, that every detail was engineered, not negotiated. But cost-cutting changes everything. Shared components, supplier pressure, tighter margins. Suddenly, decisions that once favored durability now favor efficiency. And the three-pointed star, once synonymous with bulletproof engineering, starts to feel like just another logo. This isn't nostalgia talking, it's an expectation. When you buy a Mercedes, you expect excellence by default. Anything less feels like betrayal. Chapter 5. AMG from monster to marketing label. There was a time when AMG meant one thing: uncompromising performance. AMG cars were rare, loud, excessive, and unapologetic. Big engines, hand-built powertrains, zero concern for efficiency optics. Today, that image is fading. The AMG badge now appears on too many models, including vehicles powered by four-cylinder engines, a move that deeply divided enthusiasts. From a regulatory and efficiency standpoint, the decision makes sense. From a branding standpoint, it's dangerous. AMG wasn't just a trim level, it was a statement. By spreading AMG across the lineup, Mercedes diluted what made it special. When everything is AMG, nothing is. Performance brands rely on mythology, and mythology doesn't survive mass production. For loyal fans, this shift felt like betrayal, not innovation. Chapter 6. Design Identity. When Mercedes stopped looking like Mercedes, design is emotional memory. You should recognize a Mercedes instantly without the badge. But recent designs, especially in the EQ electric lineup, have struggled with exactly that. Critics argue the EQ models lack presence, authority, distinctiveness. Instead of commanding the road, they blend into it. The problem isn't modernity, it's a character. Traditional Mercedes designs conveyed strength, confidence, and permanence. EQ designs, while aerodynamic and futuristic, often feel anonymous. In luxury, blending in is failure. When a Mercedes doesn't look unmistakably like a Mercedes, its value becomes harder to justify. Chapter 7. The China Problem. Losing the future market. If luxury has a battleground in the 21st century, it's China. Not Europe, not the United States. China is where automotive futures are decided. For decades, Mercedes-Benz understood this. China became its largest and most critical market, one that didn't just buy cars, but defined what luxury meant in the modern era. Status, innovation, technology, and speed mattered here more than tradition alone. But today, Mercedes is losing ground, and not slowly. Chinese EV manufacturers are no longer catching up. They are setting the pace. Local brands now offer vehicles with more advanced smart driving systems, faster innovation cycles measured in months, not years, deeply localized digital ecosystems, aggressive pricing that undercuts traditional luxury brands. In China, luxury buyers don't only ask, "Is this prestigious?" They ask, "Is this smarter than what I already have?" And increasingly, Mercedes struggles to answer that question. The traditional Mercedes strengths, heritage, comfort, engineering legacy still matter, but they no longer dominate buying decisions. Chinese consumers expect seamless software, cutting-edge interfaces, advanced driver assistance, and constant updates. This is where Mercedes's EV lineup begins to feel exposed. The EQ series, intended to signal a bold electric future, has failed to excite at the same level as local competitors. Not because it's bad, but because it's not fast enough, not adaptive enough, not tailored enough. In China, speed is luxury. Local manufacturers design cars specifically for Chinese lifestyles, digital habits, and urban realities. Mercedes, by contrast, often feels like it's adapting global products after the fact. The result isn't collapse, it's something worse: irrelevance. Sales don't vanish overnight, but influence does. Brand authority erodes quietly. And once a luxury brand stops being aspirational in China, reclaiming that position becomes incredibly difficult. This problem extends far beyond quarterly earnings. China isn't just a market, it's an innovation laboratory. The technologies that succeed there shape global automotive trends. By falling behind in China, Mercedes risks losing its role as a future-defining brand. Instead of leading, it reacts. Instead of setting standards, it follows them. This isn't just about losing sales, it's about losing the future conversation. Chapter 8: The Strategy Behind the Shift. Survival over soul. From the outside, Mercedes's transformation can look confused and almost panicked. But it isn't. It's calculated. CEO Ola Källenius is not dismantling Mercedes by accident. He is responding to financial reality with surgical precision. Margins that once exceeded 15% collapsed to 5.3%. Net income fell 56% in the first half of 2025. High-end models stopped carrying the company the way they once did. At that point, ideology becomes a luxury. The new priorities became clear: volume over exclusivity, platform efficiency over bespoke engineering, EV scalability over niche perfection. The goal is brutally simple: sell more cars, stay alive. Smaller, more accessible models once slated for abandonment returned to the strategy. The CLA and similar vehicles now anchor Mercedes's volume ambitions. This isn't incompetence, it's triage. In medicine, triage means saving the body even if parts must be sacrificed. And what Mercedes is sacrificing, at least temporarily, is its luxury soul. The old strategy promised exclusivity, scarcity, and dominance at the top. The new strategy promises stability, scale, and survival. These two philosophies cannot coexist comfortably. Luxury thrives on restraint. Mass-market survival thrives on expansion. Mercedes is attempting to balance both, and that balance is fragile. The company insists it hasn't abandoned the top end. Investments in Maybach, AMG, and flagship vehicles continue. But resources are finite, and attention follows volume. Every decision optimized for scale chips away at what once made Mercedes untouchable. The irony is painful. To protect the brand's future, Mercedes is reshaping the brand itself. This strategy may succeed financially, but luxury brands aren't measured only by profit. They're measured by belief, and belief is far harder to rebuild than balance sheets. Chapter 9. Is Mercedes really losing everything? So after all this, after declining margins, identity shifts, and market pressure, is Mercedes-Benz truly losing everything that made it luxury? The answer is more complicated than yes or no, because despite everything, Mercedes is still standing. It remains one of the world's top-selling luxury brands. Its badge still carries weight. Its history still commands respect. Most importantly, Mercedes hasn't abandoned its crown jewels. Maybach still exists. AMG still commands attention. Flagship vehicles are still being developed, refined, and defended. This is not surrender. It's a dangerous balancing act. Mercedes is betting on a two-phase future. Stabilize profitability through volume, reclaim prestige once financial pressure eases. In theory, this makes sense, but luxury history is unforgiving. Brands that dilute too far often struggle to climb back up. Customers remember how a brand made them feel, and losing that feeling is hard to reverse. Mercedes is gambling that loyalty, heritage, and scale will buy it time. The next decade will decide whether that gamble pays off. If Mercedes can regain technological leadership, restore quality confidence, reassert design authority, rebuild exclusivity at the top, then this period may be remembered as painful but necessary. But if volume becomes habit, if cost-cutting becomes culture, if luxury becomes marketing instead of substance, then Mercedes won't collapse. It will fade. And fading is the quietest failure of all. When luxury forgets what it is, Mercedes-Benz isn't collapsing. It's transforming. But transformation comes at a cost. By chasing volume, Mercedes risks becoming what it once stood above. By cutting costs, it risks losing trust. By broadening appeal, it risks erasing aspiration. Luxury brands don't fail overnight. They fade slowly, quietly, rationally. The question isn't whether Mercedes can survive, it's whether it can survive as Mercedes. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Mercedes-Benz is losing its luxury identity? Or is this painful shift the only way forward in an electric future? Would you still choose a Mercedes today, or has the three-pointed star lost its magic? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive documentary, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves cars. Because the future of luxury isn't just being built in factories, it's being decided